and welcome back for another CottageCutz YouTube video tutorial. This is Marla with Mad About Cards and Crafts, and today we are going to be celebrating Christmas in July. I am going to be using the folk art deer from the Scrap and Cottage. Here's a look at that die set. I did want to share with you that it is a little bit different than the typical cottage cut dies because they do come with tie rods, which will make it a little bit easier for you to change up your colors for the deer. And then this is the solid look. I'm going to be using the Christmas Farmhouse Floral. As you can see, that die comes in one piece. I've die cut all of my pieces. The deer I cut from craft cardstock. There are two layers to the deer. One is solid and then the other one has the impressions showing you where each of the little accent pieces should go on the deer. When you layer the two together, it is going to give you a little bit thicker appearance. I did want to mention and point out that it is possible to use the solid deer without the embossed accents on it, to use it on a different project, and you wouldn't have to use the folk art pieces and just use it as your standard deer. I die cut the antlers using some gold foil cardstock, and I'm not gonna lie, this one, because of my long nails, it was a little bit fiddly for me, so it was a little bit harder for me to line up than some of the other folk art ones. The hooves especially are a little bit small, so for the hooves, instead of die cutting them from some black cardstock, it would be a little bit easier if you didn't care about the additional dimension to just use a black pen to add those. For the accent pieces, I cut some of them. Let's talk about the the pine needle pieces. Those two were cut out of some teal cardstock, and then for the flower and the heart, I did use a raspberry cardstock. I cut the center of the flower out using that teal cardstock as well. So my card is going to focus on the colors of craft, teal, and raspberry with a touch of black and a touch of gold. I'll get this flower on, and then I'm going to start working on the hooves, and that's where this took a little bit more time, especially because I have my fingernails that get in the way when I'm trying to pick up such tiny pieces, and I can't find my other embellishment wand, so this one doesn't always pick things up as well as I would like. And the other one that I have does pick up a little bit more better. It does have that wax to the tip of it, which adheres a little bit more to these smaller pieces. So that was one of the issues that took me a little bit more time with the hooves, and then of course the nose. For the eye, there is a little bit of an indentation there. Once I get the hooves put on, I am going to use a black micron pen, and I will color in the eyes. Before I move on, while I'm putting this together, I did want to mention that in my last video I was giving away the eagle with top hat die. So I did create a Patriot card using the eagle with top hat, and the winner of that was Mrs. B. Justice. I will have Mary Marsh's information linked in the description box below. All you need to do is send her an email, let her know that you are the winner of the eagle with top hat, and she will make sure to get your prize out to you. So congratulations, Mrs. B. Justice. All right, so I'm going to fiddle with this just a little bit more. I'm going to put the nose on right here, and then I'll color in that little bit of an eye. I'll add the center to my flower, and we are going to move on to the background piece for my focal point. So I wanted to add that teal, gold, and raspberry pink back into the card, complementary of the colors that I have used on this folk art deer. And I die cut an arch using one of my Arches dies, and then I took the same size arch that I used to die cut out of the raspberry cardstock, and then I used a smaller one, so I think it was 1 or 2 sizes smaller, die cut the two of them together, and that gave me a frame, and I cut that out of the teal cardstock. So we are going to do a little bit of heat embossing. I have a background stamp, and it is a word stamp, so it does have the words to The Night Before Christmas. I'm using my Altenew stamp wheel. This is something that I recently purchased because I do like to stamp with layering stamps, and I watched several videos using this stamp platform, and I thought that it would be a really helpful tool in my craft room to use with my layering stamps, and so far I'm really liking it. So I'm showing you that I do have the enamel dot at the top, and that's going to always tell me which way is the top, so I never get confused with that. I inked up my stamp using some Versamark ink, and then I'm going to bring in some gold embossing powder, and again this is going to tie in the gold that I added to the antlers. And once I get this covered, I am going to heat it with my heat tool. I heat up my heat tool for between 30 seconds and a minute to make sure that it gets nice and hot before I bring it to my paper. That way I don't have to worry about my paper being scorched. And you can see the magic of that embossing. As that embossing powder melts, the gold gets a lot shinier, it's not as dull, and it's just really beautiful. Off camera, I die cut and colored the Christmas Farmhouse floral pieces that I wanted to use. So I have a poinsettia, I have 2 pine cones. The pine cones are layering pine cones, so the top layer is not a solid, and I took my glue and went over all of those areas, and then I am adding it to some silk glue or some silk glitter. This is super fine glitter, and I really like this. I use a Wink of Stella pen or a Nuvo glitter pen occasionally. My preference is the glitter. I think that the effect is just so much more dramatic. You get a lot more sparkle. Yes, you get a little bit of mess, and you're going to see a little bit of glitter on my desk, but I just think that the effect is so much prettier than just using one of those pens. So I do like to take the time. I add the wet glue. You can see I'm not covering the entire leaf. I'm not going to cover all of the petals on my poinsettia. I'm just going to kind of add squiggly lines, and that's going to give just that little bit of sparkle and shine to the project. And of course, that's something that I personally like. You don't have to do this if you are not a fan of the glitter. I like the ultra fine glitter a lot more than the chunky glitter. In fact, the chunky glitter, I use it more for my shaker cards, and I use this fine glitter for my detailed die cuts. I did not add any glue to the center of the poinsettias so that I was able to just layer them together much easier. If I would have added glue and the glitter to the center of those flowers, it would have been much harder for me to get those adhered and layered together. I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to the bottom layer of my background, so I am adding some picked raspberry around the edges, and then there is that teal frame. As I mentioned, I just took 2 of the arch die cuts. I aligned them so that I could get a even arch frame for my embossed panel. I did cut that from teal cardstock. I have a A2 top folding card base that I've cut from Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I love that craft with the pink and the teal. I'm going to add my die cut pieces. The glue and the glitter are intact. And I am going to add a swag across the top. Swags are some of my favorite things to add to Christmas cards. I love adding that little pop of floral. I think it adds a little bit of elegance to the card. I'm going to layer up my poinsettia, and then once I get that layered, I will put it at the center of the top of my arch. And again, this is just adding more elegance and beauty to the card, because we do have that folk art, those folk art pieces on the deer. It's going to just tie that elegance together nicely. I do not glue my leaves. I only glue the vine portion so that I can get that dimension and I can lift up those leaves if I like. I will flank the poinsettia with a pine cone on the left and the right side, and then we will add our deer to the back, and this is coming together beautifully. I would love to know in the comments below if you are a Christmas in July card maker. This is the first time. Now, I've dabbled and made a card here and there, but this is the first time that I've actually focused all of my cards. I think there's going to be one this month that isn't going to be Christmas in July, but all of my cards with the Christmas in July to get that nice head start. I liked the idea of being able to use some of the products that I've had in my stash and I didn't get a chance to use before all of the new products come in, and I want all of those. So I will have a link to my channel in the description box if you are interested in seeing some of those videos and my blog post from the other cards that I've created. I added the word Noel. I did do some heat embossing with that gold embossing powder to tie that in, and that completes my card for today. So I hope you enjoyed this. As I mentioned, I will have the products that I used from the Scrap and Cottage linked in the description box below. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.